So without further ado, I want to bring up to the stage Richard Hogg.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me at the back? Are we excited? Shall we raise the information governance excitement level even higher? All right. Well, let me take you through in the next 30 minutes a lightning tour of what on earth is GDPR, the new EU data privacy regulation, and how could it, should it apply to you, and what are the benefits. And joining me today will be Dennis from Northern Trust. Hey, Dennis. Will you come up, or I'll stay in here. And Dennis will be speaking from the client perspective. What's the real-world experience of trying to do or use a information governance, a unified governance solution to benefit the business? So, GDPR is just about 240 days away. Are you ready? Anyone ready? Anyone think that GDPR applies to their business? Okay, keep your hands up. How many have a program, a GDPR program that's actually running? Okay, not many hands. And it's still surprising, even in Europe, where I spend a lot of my time this year, how many European-based or resident organizations are still learning or still in an analysis paralysis mode, trying to work out how does GDPR actually apply to me. So GDPR is the new EU data privacy or privacy regulation. It raises the bar of standardizing across the 28 member states of Europe data protection and data privacy obligations, duties, and rights, both on the companies that have all personal information and for you as data subjects for what you can do, see, and control with what they do with your information. The reason that GDPR has our focus is it's not the first data privacy regulation out there. There's been multiple countries in Europe as well as around the world who have had them over the last 20 years or so. It's the big teeth and penalties, the potential fines of up to 20 million euros or 4% of your global annual turnover. That has our attention. And this is per incident. So we need to get on top of GDPR. So what is personal data? It's the real focus of GDPR. It's any information that can directly or indirectly identify you as a person or you. This information could be anywhere in the world. GDPR doesn't apply only if your information is an EU data center. It's literally wherever it's stored or processed in the world, viewed as an extraterritorial regulation. So if you're in Europe as a citizen, or if you're visiting Europe for 30 minutes in a European airport, or you're consuming electronic goods or services from a European supplier or vendor, then potentially GDPR applies to your information. And there are things that companies need to do to protect and secure that information and give you transparent insight into how and what are they using on you, and you can inquire and correct or even remove that at any point. So some client observations in their GDPR journeys. We've got clients we describe as hares. They're pretty much on top of it. They've done their analysis, they've done their privacy impact assessment, they know what they need to do, they just need help from a services and solutions side from vendors to actually start their journey. You've got the tortoises who really don't know when to come out of their shell, they don't know where to start. And again, the best advice is at least start up front with your privacy impact assessment. Get a lay of the land, get to know your gaps for your business in your current state against the regulation, then you can at least start to plan. And then the ostriches. Organizations, large multinational organizations, heavily regulated, based in Europe, who don't believe anything will happen with GDPR. They're just going to wait and see. They're not really going to find me, are they? They're not really going to impact or affect this legislation. That's certainly a strategy. Best defense would be at least do your privacy impact assessment and get ready for May 28 next year. So, 5 key areas that GDPR applies. And GDPR, like any other regulation, is the least about any technology. There's no easy magic button, no easy single solution you can acquire and deploy to solve the GDPR challenge. It's the age-old information governance challenge of change management across an enterprise and raising the people, policies, and processes to a level state to maintain and comply with the regulation. And GDPR is not the only regulation that applies to our business either, right? If only. So are there things that GDPR requires that other regulations do not? Or where are there intersections where it's a challenge to determine what really should be our policy of action, especially around disposal, for example. But focusing on these key 5 areas and then raising the policies, the people, and the process capabilities will put you in good stead. We've also had success with this framework, this prescriptive set of phases, or your journey through towards GDPR readiness, starting off commonly on assessments on the left-hand side. Do your first privacy impact assessment. Where are we against the regulation? And certainly from last year through to this year, this is where most organizations I've worked with around the world have been doing their first step in their GDPR journey. And I've been working with clients over 3 years now on their GDPR readiness journey. So not everyone has started only this year. 80% though of clients right now, especially since Q2 this year, have been focused on transformation and really doing the personal deep data discovery from the bottom up. They know summarily their risk to the business, they know the remediation areas they need to address. The next challenge now is, where do I have personal data in the business? The biggest request, most often request I get from CISOs or DPOs or CDOs is, can you help me find where there's personal data in my business? I have no idea where it is, really, especially in all that unstructured stuff, all that dog data. Structured systems and databases and apps, I'm on top of, but all the unstructured stuff, no idea. And they can have petabytes of this stuff. And there are obviously solutions from multiple vendors who can accelerate your ability to find that personal information. As you're looking towards solutions to help you accelerate your GDPR journey, look for these core capabilities. Overall fundamental is that program and data governance. So whatever you're doing, whatever you'll be ready by in May next year, how will you be able to respond to the regulators, especially the GDPR, who will look for what's called Article 30, the record of processing. The UCAN, once the regulator comes knocking May next year, the first thing they want to see is your record of processing. Do you know what's personal data in the business? Where is it stored? How is it used? What's the legitimate processing? Are there exceptions or special types of processing or data, sensitive personal data, like your genetic information, that you may need to get explicit purposeful consent that you let me and you let me and you don't process that information? It has to go down to that level. Getting a central catalog or a unified governance catalog. So summarily we know where is all of our stuff by category and type of policy, and then we can start to instrument and execute across the business. Data lifecycle or information governance, another word there of records management. We can't keep everything forever anymore. You probably heard of the right to be forgotten in previous EU legislation, now into GDPR, the right to erase. If you no longer have a business relationship with me, I can no longer keep your information. You could file at any point a data subject access request, and I've got 30 days to comply. Not reply, but comply. Prove to you I no longer have all of your personal information, and I've erased it across the business. And GDPR is not just about electronic information, it's all information. So what do we do about all those backup tapes and offline media, and do we still have paper records? So some fundamental capabilities. What's IBM doing about GDPR? IBM is one of the world's biggest processors and controllers of information, and we operate globally, so we've taken a global approach to GDPR. We can't ring-fence parts of our business or even collections of our data stores to just within or about European data and citizens. So we've taken a global approach, and we're executing a global program for GDPR, of which I'm also part internally. And we just released in the last 2 weeks our readiness statement, our commitment to the market and our clients who use all of our services and offerings that we will be GDPR compliant. And IBM is a leader in lots of these elements. We were the first with a chief privacy officer, the first with a genetics privacy policy, and genetic information is a key sensitive category under GDPR. And we're the first to join the EU Data Protection Code of Conduct for Cloud Services. Say that fast 3 times. So you can trust, at least from a data privacy and security concern, that your data in any of these data centers in Europe meets the highest, strictest controls of data security and data privacy. So, finding personal data. Anyone here have started their personal data discovery? Couple? Okay. You probably found out very quickly that it's not as simple as we thought. most personal data is not actually findable through patterns or with a geek speak of regular expressions. So if you think of a telephone number or a passport number, in the US, a social security number, very few personal data types you can find through patterns or strings. To find the extensive set of personal data, your name, your address, your country location, your voting preference. For this, you need to use more advanced machine learning, even cognitive abilities. And we're now providing accelerators to help clients with an extended set of European personal data translated in 11 of the most common European languages. So very quickly out of the box, you can start to find personal data. You don't need to spend time creating and defining personal data to your business. And these key accelerators we're using, again, in our internal program. What we're consuming and using internally for services and solutions for our own GDPR readiness is what we provide to our clients around the world as well. One of these is cognitive insight. So IBM, as a global company, is under multiple regulations. And again, lots of these regulations compete in terms of policies, duties, controls, and obligations. So we use our Watson cognitive technology to digest all of the regulations. Literally, you can feed in the GDPR regulation and the MiFID II regulation, whatever applies to your business, and help you distill all the controls and obligations that you can then execute in a global regulatory compliance program. And then Watson compare and comply. IBM has just a few contracts, a few million contracts. And we need to update and amend all those for data privacy and processing. And again, we're able to mass ingest these using Watson cognitive technologies to help us deduce and make those changes at scale. So data protection, compliance, data security, it's fundamental to the business. And ever more, we see the most recent breaches. I think today was it the Deloitte data breach? Previously Equifax. How many of us have not been impacted from breaches from Target onwards over the last 2 years? It's not a case of if, but when. GDPR puts in place the obligation to raise the bar of privacy by default and by design. You should be encrypting, potentially, most of your information at rest and on the fly. If you've encrypted stuff under GDPR, then you don't have to tell every single data subject when you leak information. You still have to tell the regulator. GDPR wants you to respond and tell the regulator within 72 hours that you've had a data breach. What's the average in the US for companies to realize they've had a breach? 100 days. How are we going to close that gap? Again, cognitive security capabilities can help you there. And then, why is GDPR a critical aspect of information governance? How is information governance a framework for us to meet GDPR and every other regulation that applies to the business? Because it gives us the foundation, again, focusing on the people, policies, and processes, and be able to automate and instrument these at enterprise scale. Get a central unified catalog so we know summarily where all our stuff is, the type of information, down to the data center and the data store, and we know the policies that apply, deduced from the multiple and often competing regulations on them. So, unified governance. Take the library analogy. How easy is it to find information? We need to look up in a catalog, and we saw the historic and the modern Google examples in the previous videos. So we need to look up in the library catalog. If we have key metadata, we can very quickly find the relevant information. If we've got older information we still want to access and be accessible as formats change over time, we'll look into archiving. So previously we've done microfilm. Not everything lasts forever, so if you need to recycle or change books, then we need to take them through a life cycle and a disposal process. And then we may need to control who has access. For example, what books can children get access to versus adults, simplistically. So unified governance catalog, regardless of the size of your collection, is a key framework for information governance journey. And we're seeing two key use cases driving our clients around their information governance strategy. One, obviously, is governance for compliance. They'll have multiple competing regulations that are applied to their business, but with unified governance, they can distill down those policies and make them executable. They'll know where their information is through a central catalog, and they can start where it's economically feasible and right to do so, to apply those and automate them at enterprise scale. But we really want to get to governance for insights. Start to use analytics and Watson cognitive abilities to not only deduce and help us identify what happened previously on information, and be able to prescribe or predict what will happen based on the information streams we have, but help us develop and expand new lines of business and new opportunities on all this data we're collecting. And we're doing this, for many of us, we're doing this to make money. And we're collecting this information to hopefully expand and extend the business. Under GDPR, if we're able to meet and keep GDPR compliant, we may have a more trusted relationship with our customers, with our clients. They may trust us there'll be that digital trust element. You may share more information, more personal information with us, that we can then develop whole new business models and prescriptive and personalized offerings back to you. And that's what every client really wants. And our customers are saying the same. With these unified governance and cognitive abilities, orders of magnitude in improving their speed to accelerate decisions and interactions with their clients at a personal level. So, enough about the concepts and the focus on GDPR. Let's switch to real-world examples. Let me introduce Dennis from Northern Trust, SVP of Engineering and Data, and he'll give us some of the real-world journey examples and experiences.
Excellent.
Over to you, Dennis.
Great job. No matter how many times I get in front of a group, I still have a fear of public speaking. So I know what you're thinking. Hey, that guy looks really awesome in his JCPenney suit. He's got it going on. Well, right now I'm just thinking right, left, don't trip. So let's start off with a joke. I'm not near as funny as what Ravi will be, but how many business, I'm sorry, let me restate this. How many business users does it take to change a light bulb? None, right? It's an IT problem, okay? How many programmers does it take to change a light bulb? None, it's a data problem. So I'm here to talk to you about data from a real world perspective, but from the last 30 years of my career, I've worked for major vendors such as IBM, Sybase, Informix, Oracle, Teradata, et cetera. For the last 4 years, I've been at Northern Trust. We're a financial services firm out of Chicago. My first 2 years there, I was the Chief Data Governance Officer for our wealth management practice. And people were saying, our data sucks. Well, what does that mean? Can you show me what your statistics are, what your profiling results are? Well, they didn't have any tools or anything like that. So we brought in some tools. After I complained a lot about not having a good understanding of my data, we use a lot of acronyms where I work. Do you guys use acronyms too? Sometimes you think you're in a conversation and you have a good grasp of what people are talking about, then 2 days later, oh, that's not what that was? Anyone have? That happens all the time. I still have issues with that. What's IBM? Ibm? No. When do you use an acronym? When do you actually use the name? So as we move forward through the journey with bringing in these tools and me complaining, they moved me over to head up enterprise data architecture. So I'm trying to get a better understanding to where I can support our data governance team. So I moved out of the governance side onto the enablement side. So when I look at data, I have over 600 applications. Does anyone have a panacea of just one application? No, we don't really have a data quality issue where I'm at. We have a data integration issue. And as we have about 3,000 people in IT, sometimes specs aren't followed appropriately. Sometimes we name things multiple things, such as Social Security number. You know that to be an acronym like SF. But you have coders that may do SOAK-SEC, SOAK-SEC, SOAK_SEC, TIN, all these different variations. Not just at the column level, but also in the view level, in the materialized view level. Sorry if I'm getting a little techie here, but you see data propagates itself. So what I complained about was we need to get a better grasp of our metadata. We have a good understanding of rows, tables, and columns. Sort of, the DBAs do, but not necessarily the programmers. So what I'm going to talk to you about is the vision that we put together between our tools and a metadata registry. So hopefully that works. What are the benefits? This over here is our timelines. We started this probably about April timeframe. We used the InfoSphere platform because we were primarily an InfoSphere data stage shop at the time. Made sense. We have a huge implementation of MDM server. I wanted to get a good command of our data. So what's in it for me? It's understanding our data. we're creating a searchable catalog inside of IGC, which is the governance catalog, to where you can take a contextual search term and just say SSN. It comes up, you get to see who the data steward is for it, what rules are around it, such as you can't have a non-number in there. Last name was kind of an interesting thing. My last name was actually an issue when I started. Someone put in 7 instead of an L for Waldren. W-A-7-D-R-O-N. It didn't pass any consistency checks. Why? Because we hadn't profiled. So going through what's in it for me, I get a better command of my data. Why do we care? Increased collaboration. Oh, and we got some more acronyms up there. CCAR, EDP, AML. Who've heard of that? Anti-money laundering, CCAR. My job would be so easy if it weren't for regulations. Does anyone else have regulations they got to worry about? And they're really cheap and easy to do, right? And work still gets done, all your current deliverables. So we want to reduce risk. We want to reduce development time. If you know where your data is, it shouldn't take so long to do data mapping. Everyone here really have a solid IT team that understands how to do data mapping? You have a spreadsheet and things just magically happen? All projects are on time or earlier and under budget? So kind of a big deal. So what I had to ask for help on was getting access to system catalogs. I'm not IT and I'm not the business. I'm that fulcrum in between. I have business knowledge and IT knowledge. So what does that make me? Extremely unpopular. It does. I'm a threat to some areas and I'm annoying to others. Kind of like what I'm probably doing to you guys right now. So what we did is a high-level design. By the way, who's heard of this wonderful new technology called Hadoop? Yeah, boy, things go there to die, don't they? HDFS, right? You know how you're going to make it better? You're going to put it in Hive. Okay, well, you have to understand what goes in there because as thousands and thousands and thousands of files get moved over from your source systems, you lose synthesis of what that is. Because a data lake answers everybody's problem, right? See what I'm doing there? See what I did? Okay. So I'm not chasing the technology. My role is not technology. My role is data. So I need to understand the inception of data all the way to consumption. To me, Hadoop, a data lake, that's a landing area. Things get transformed in there after they're landed, but I want to know what those transformations are. So we have DBMS's Hadoop data model. Who here knows what a canonical model is, or a conceptual model, or a logical model? We don't. We have a lot of physical models. Third normal form, absolutely. But do you know when an index is a B tree versus a bit? We don't, but we had to reverse engineer it. So I know I'm getting a little techie here, but it's kind of fun. But if we can get a good understanding of how our data relates, how it moves through the information lifecycle. So our metadata foundation and strategy, top to bottom, bottom to top. We have a good understanding of business. We have a good understanding of the physical side. But those little 3 things in the middle, the logical application design, those are things which we did not have a good grasp on. Yeah, we understood our data stage jobs or our batch jobs, but we didn't understand the interdependencies or how things moved. Now you can get a visual representation through our chosen platform, being the InfoSphere tool suite, to where you click on that SSN, it comes up, you can do business lineage and technical lineage. It comes up visually so you can see this is the system of record, this is who uses it. Literally, you could print these things out on a plotter and make a war room out of it just so you could follow the data. With 600 different applications at Northern, you see why this is a challenge. So the Metadata Registry, it's a centralized location. Metadata management, we had to come up with a process, more than just spreadsheets. Because we all know real business happens where? In a spreadsheet. Isn't that where all business decisions are made? Doesn't matter what technology you have, it'll go through multiple EDWs. Notice how I said multiple EDWs? Because there's really not just one. You have multiple data marts, et cetera, but someone's going to get in a spreadsheet, and what are they going to do? They're going to put in their little magical variable and spit out some sort of number, which is what Wall Street will probably go by. So you want to track that back. Who here uses macros? Okay, macros. Does anyone track those as to what secret sauce is behind that one macro that's out on a shared drive, which makes huge business decisions? Well, those are things that we want to grasp. We want to design our metadata. We want to understand the structure, the description, and the relationship. The administration we'll get to eventually. That's more of a later thing for us on how these assets get administered. And then our operational metadata. You have technical metadata, which is what we're doing now. The business metadata, we're doing that through our data governance side. But the operational metadata, who's consuming my data? When's it being consumed? Who changed what, when, and where? So tying into technologies like ServiceNow, or your architectural tools like True or Iteraplan. So you can see how things flow or how they should flow, and are you still working on your strategic outcome. And this is our metadata lifecycle. Really just understand, design, and govern. Should I skip over this? I could go in exhausting detail for this. This would be fun, wouldn't it? Maybe we'll wait for that one to the questions, or if anyone wants to talk later, be more than happy to help you out with that. The main thing is understand your data. So take command of your data. Get a good understanding of all the assets from the lowest level first. Reverse engineer those through your system catalog. Understand your ETL. By the way, ETL. Who uses ETL versus ELT? A lot of times we extract, we load it, and then we transform it through common SQL. So we kind of lose synthesis there. That happens a lot. If you can reverse that, then you can actually get some of the value out of a lot of your high-priced transformational tools. And then understanding your data models. We have something called the NT-ISO. Our enterprise data model is based upon the ISO 20022 standard, which is a messaging model that banks use to communicate with each other. We've modified that based upon how our bank runs. So I've now taken over that. That was something that was handled by the individual project teams. We've now centralized that, so we have a common understanding, common footprint with policies, procedures, and standards, so we don't have SOAK-SEC, SOAK-SEC, SSN, all those different variations. And then put together a standards and policies library, and then through an enterprise data services visa. That's our checkpoint. From an audit perspective, we need to make sure that correct people were involved at the right time through the information lifecycle management. We inserted ourselves. We used to have a process that went from the business to IT. By inserting ourselves, as I said, as the fulcrum, we now have a data visa process. So that way, if you could bypass me before, you can't now. So I inserted myself to make sure I've tagged what you're trying to do from a metadata perspective, and I've cataloged it to where it can be reused, reconsumed, and adopted by other people. And that's it. I think I blazed through that relatively quick. I look forward to having a conversation with all of you guys on that very lovely model that we have.
Thank you, Dennis. Good job.